1980s common wisdom dictated that we, here in America, never got the hottest and most desirable cars from abroad. Things like this. The legendary Ford Sierra RS Cosworth, the ultimate road-going holy grail homologation race car. Front engine, rear drive, big spoiler, and it never came to America. Except it kinda did. This is a Merkur XR4Ti. And if it looks a lot like the Sierra, well, it's because it is a Sierra. It landed here with a turbocharged bang, winning drag races, awards, and positive reviews, but not buyers. This is the story of how a bad dealership experience can ruin even a good car's chance of success. So, pretty lady, what's it gonna take to get you to take one of these fine cars home today? This is a Ford Sierra RS Cosworth, and to those in the know, it's as coveted as a Ferrari. And that's because it's better to drive than a Ferrari. And no, I'm not joking. The Sierra RS Cosworth was also Ferrari fast. At a time when a quick European family car could hit 60 miles an hour in 10 seconds, the Cosy did it in half that time. When 2-liter 4-cylinder engines routinely struggled to make 100 horsepower, it made twice that many. And when everyone else was battling each other out in European touring car championships, it was only for second place, because the Sierra RS Cosworth had already won. The Cosy beat everything in its path, with the final RS 500 version famously winning 84.6% of all of the races it entered. It won so much that it got itself banned repeatedly, and then effectively killed off Group A racing because even the banning couldn't stop it from winning. This is particularly ironic because the Sierra started out with no racing intent whatsoever. Quite the opposite, in fact. The project began in 1978 as a replacement for the Cortina, a sober, serious, mid-size family car. Amazingly, the Sierra had only one mandate from management. It must be the most airflow-efficient automobile produced by Ford anywhere in the world. Remember, 1978 was in the middle of a decade of continual upheaval and uncertainty about the price and availability of gasoline, to say nothing of the political turmoil and rampant inflation. It was not a good time. The ultra-futuristic shape made its first public appearance on the Probe 3 show car, which was a gussied-up preview of the production Sierra that Ford debuted in 1982. The Sierra won 15 International Design Awards with a drag coefficient as low as 0.32. It was an overnight sensation throughout most of Europe, where it captured 3.9% of the total European car market. For perspective, the current best-selling vehicle in America would need a 30% bump in sales just to match the Sierra's market share in Europe in the 1980s. It was an incredibly popular car. Problem was, the European market wasn't all that big and it wasn't all that profitable. And Ford Corporate wanted to know why its European subsidiary wasn't making big money when BMW and Audi and Mercedes were making a killing. It came down to the US market, where the strong dollar meant huge profits for European car companies. And even more important, during the 4 short years of the Sierra's development, the quote-unquote luxury specialty category in the US had tripled its market share, meaning there was mucho money to be made now, and even more in the future. The man in charge of Ford of Europe who realized this was none other than, hold on, excuse me, sorry, Bob Lutz. Mr. Lutz.
Jason.
Hi, listen, we're doing a Revelations episode on XR4Ti. I'll call you back.
Okay.
Bob Lutz, if you don't know, is the executive responsible throughout his career for some of the most desirable enthusiast cars on the planet. Right before running Ford of Europe, Lutz ran BMW's global marketing, where he came up with the ultimate driving machine slogan. So of course, he had his eyes on BMW's near vertical ascent to yuppie nirvana, and he wanted a piece of the action. And so, Lutz designed a program to send European Fords to the US. Mr. Lutz.
Rather than being a Ford U.S. import program, it would be a Ford of Europe export program. In other words, Ford of Europe would have control over the product, the marketing, the PR, the dealer selection, etc.
Okay, I see why that was important, because, to quote Car and Driver from back in the day, one of the grand homespun traditions of the domestic automobile industry has been its ability to take perfectly good European cars and transform them into mediocrities. Or, worse yet, to take mediocre European cars and turn them into ambulatory catastrophes. That's a good line. And so, Bob's mission was, in his own words, to federalize the car without changing its fundamental European character. Thought he would call back for that one. Anyway, the Sierra chosen for the US market was the sportiest variant of them all, the Sierra XR4i. In Ford speak, XR was code for the sporty model, and the number grew relative to the size of the car. Bigger the car, higher the number. It couldn't be called the Sierra in the US because Oldsmobile owned the rights to the name, albeit Sierra with a C. So Ford would need a new name for the car, and to make sure no one thought of it as just a Ford, it needed a whole new brand name, too. Enter Merkur, Merkur, Merkin, Mercat, Merkur. Oh, hold on, sorry. Hey, Mr. Lutz.
I came up with the name, which many people felt was not brilliant because Americans didn't know how to pronounce it, but figured, well, you know, Volkswagen Golf was a stupid name too. It never held the car back.
Fair point. Thank you, Bob. Hey, listen, if you speak German, the name Merkur doesn't sound stupid at all, because the word Merkur is the German word for Mercury, the planet, the element, and Ford's own sub-brand. Mercury, Merkur. Ford contacted specialty car builder Karmann, who set about the task of re-engineering the Sierra to comply with U.S. lighting and safety regulations. The floor pan and the roof rails were strengthened, bumpers beefed up, and that was about all that was needed, an unusually small amount of changes. Ultimately, Karmann would also build the XR4Ti, making this the only Sierra that was actually built in Germany, despite Ford of Europe being effectively a German car company. However, while the Sierra worked at even very high speeds on the relatively short distances that Germans traveled on autobahns, it might not have been isolated enough for hours on end slogs down America's painfully slow 55-mile-an-hour interstates. And so the Merkur received a whole host of sound-deadening upgrades to make it quiet and refined. But the big issue was the engine. European XR4Is used a 2.8-liter V6 that was never federalized for use in the US, and it would have lost a ton of power by the time it was cleaned up. So instead, Lutz championed the turbocharged 2.3-liter four-cylinder that was already in use in the Mustang SVO, the Thunderbird Turbo Coupe, and the Mercury Cougar XR7. XR because it was the sporty model, and 7 because the Cougar was so huge. The 2.3 liter's biggest problem was noise and vibration, and they dealt with that with a quick but very thorough charm school overhaul, leaving this refined enough for use in a premium German sports coupe. Excuse me.
It was as smooth and as silky as a kitty's ear. And the nice thing is with the turbo 2.3-liter 4, it actually had better performance, even with U.S. emissions, than the European market 2.8 V6. So that was a good change.
You heard it here first. The new engine required a new name. XR4i became XR4Ti, with the T denoting the turbo. Shoving 15 pounds of boost into the old Pinto motor more than made up for the more refined Merkur's extra 300 pounds. So, not only was it quicker than the Euro Sierra, but Car and Driver was, quote, proud, pleased, and perfectly amazed that the American version is the better car. It was a machine that has been effectively yanked off the Autobahn and removed to our interstates with no penalty whatsoever. The Merkur, they said, is about perfect. And Car and Driver editors weren't drunk, or if they were, they weren't drinking alone because Motor Trend agreed. calling the Merkur a can't-lose bet, and predicting that Karmann's maximum output wouldn't be enough. Motor Week also agreed, saying,
Ford should have no problems unloading the first year's supply almost overnight.
However, all of the publications might have been a little drunk on power. With car and drivers run to 60 miles an hour in 7 seconds flat, the XR4Ti was almost half a second quicker than the then new 4-valve per cylinder Ferrari 308 Quattrovalvole. There were some criticisms, of course, like the speedometer that went blank at 85 miles an hour for no reason. This was, by the way, years after the federal law mandating such a thing had ended. And even though it easily outperformed the similarly priced BMW 3 Series, the Merkur's interior was not quite up to that dollar figure. The XR4Ti's handling was described as anywhere between fun and unhinged, depending on the skill level of the driver, thanks to a metric ton of glorious liftoff oversteer. But as any racer will tell you, a loose rear end and a lot of power is a winning recipe for a race car. And so, Ford of Europe actually took the XR4Ti back to the continent for racing. After switching the badge to Ford Sierra XR4Ti, the Merkur won the 1985 British saloon car title outright, and it won its class the next year. For once, it actually seemed like the US got the absolute hottest version of a European performance car. And yet, despite the glowing reviews, the performance, and that biplane rear spoiler, which strangely was a particular hit to BMW owners, sales never materialized. And the culprit was, most likely, the dealerships. Remember, this program was designed specifically not to be a Ford of North America import, but to be a Ford of Europe export. And Lutz did this on purpose to ensure that Ford of North America couldn't turn this into a soft, cushy, wood-paneled, crushed velvet, Mercury-badged ambulatory catastrophe. The car doesn't have a single Ford badge on the outside, and for good reason. Lutz wanted Merkur to be sold through smaller, independent, luxury specialty dealers that had franchises for quirky import brands like Saab or Volvo or Porsche. Instead, Ford HQ gave Merkur to their existing Lincoln Mercury dealers, and that was
totally 100% the wrong place to put it. That's why we gave it a different name, to keep it away from Lincoln Mercury. Well, that all fell on deaf ears. And I mean, they can move Mercury Cougars and town cars.
Yeah, the big American Luxo barges that those guys were used to selling. I can't imagine what they were like. There must have been some kind of character.
There was an archetypical car salesman with the plaid jacket and the cheap pants. And they can't understand why you would prefer a small one when for $10 a month more you can have this great big one over here.
Right, and worse, the big American stuff had higher margins and therefore paid larger commissions. And so the dealers were incentivized not to sell that premium import. And so they didn't. By 1986, it was already clear that Merkur wasn't working in America. But in Europe, things were about to get even hotter with that Sierra RS Cosworth. Hey there, boss, come on in and let me show you why you want that Cosworth and not that Merkur. The RS Cosworth has about 100 body modifications over a base Sierra, some of which you can't even see. Yeah, I know she's only got half as many wings, but this puppy's the winner, because she'll generate 45 pounds of downforce, like a race car. Don't you worry about that missing pillar over here, because this guy, he's got only one job, which is to look weird. This here Merkur had drum brakes at the back, where the Sierra had four-wheel discs. Plus, this has some sort of limited lock and diff or something from Europe. It's just positive traction, if you ask me.
That is a real Ray Caro seat.
Oh, she's a beauty, ain't she? And she's red, like a Ferrari. Hey, listen, I know it's only 2.0 liters when the Merkur's got a 2.3 liter big block. But I'm gonna get real technical with you here for a second. That cylinder head is cast iron done by Ford. That one is aluminum done by Cosworth for Ford Racing. That's a single camshaft, that's a twin camshaft. That's got 8 valves, that's got 16. And all that means is that Cosworth only needs half as much turbo boost to make 30 more horsepower. And the car is a lot quicker. Our salesman friend isn't lying, for once. Capable of 150 miles an hour, the RS Cosworth was so much quicker than British cop cars, and so likely to be stolen, that insurance companies flat out refused to insure them. And so ironically, the Sierra RS Cosworth wasn't just uncatchable, it was also unsellable. But the regular Sierra experienced no such problems. A perennial top seller, it managed to be the second best-selling car in England 10 years into its production run, which is a testament to how good it was out of the box. But it didn't matter how good the XR4Ti was here at home, because the Lincoln Mercury dealership experience made it unbuyable. And eventually, the public soured on the car and its outrageous bi-wing spoiler, leading Car and Driver to eventually add it to its list of the top 10 most embarrassing award winners in history.
Oh, that's bullshit.
You heard it from the man. Okay, that was from a completely different portion of the interview, but, hashtag editing, it worked perfectly there. Ladies and gentlemen, Maximum Bob. Man's a national treasure. And by the way, Lutz's idea for a standalone brand was brilliant. It's effectively the same thing that Toyota, Honda, and Nissan did with Lexus, Acura, and Infiniti, but Merkur did it first. And what the Japanese automakers did differently was give their Luxo brands Luxo dealerships. And well, you do the math. They're still here, and Merkur isn't. Ford pulled the plug on the brand in 1989, taking with it the XR4Ti and a second car, the 2-year-old V6-powered Scorpio, which somehow had landed here to even better critical reception than the XR4Ti had. Meaning the Merkur brand lasted just 5 model years, over and done, proving that 1980s conventional wisdom correct. Even when we did get Europe's best, it didn't sell here. So when Europe's best got even better, well, we didn't get it at all.